there were primary elections last night. This is an article from Business Insider on April 1st, the day before the elections last night. Uncommitted Democrats may dump Biden over the war in Gaza. They say it's not their fault if Trump wins. Is it entirely the responsibility of a political candidate to win voters, or is it the responsibility of voters to choose the lesser of two evils? That's the question shaping much of the conversation around the uncommitted movement, an ongoing campaign of Democratic voters who are, at least for now, refusing to vote for President Joe Biden this November in protest of his support for Israel's ongoing war in Gaza. I posed this question to Lexis Zaidan, a 31-year-old Palestinian-American activist and one of the leaders of the Uncommitted national movement, when I met her at a coffee shop in downtown Detroit last month. Her eyes lit up as she reached for her phone, where she pulled up an Instagram post she had seen earlier that day. "I think it'll answer your question," she said. "I will not be gaslit into voting for a man who I just watched proudly fund the murder of 30,000 plus people. If this system requires us to choose between two genocide supporters, then humanity requires us to dismantle them both," said Zaidan, reading off her phone. "It's genocide. Do not tell me I am to blame because I didn't vote for your preferred war criminal. It's genocide. Genocide is as bad as it gets." It had been just over 2 weeks since more than 101,000 Democratic voters cast uncommitted ballots in the state's Democratic primary on February 28th. That was in Michigan, demonstrating that they could cost Biden the election in at least one state. That result was driven in large part by the work of organizers, including Zaidan, Laila Alabed, Abbas Alawi, who launched the Listen to Michigan campaign just weeks before the primary. Since then, tens of thousands of voters have cast uncommitted ballots in other states. The movement has begun coalescing under the banner of the Uncommitted National Movement, and the burgeoning political bloc is set to be represented by at least 24 delegates at this summer's Democratic National Convention. The group has simple, albeit steep demands: a permanent, unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, and the reinstatement of humanitarian aid and funding to UNRWA. Okay, so like I said, that was before Tuesday. Last night, Tuesday, you had Wisconsin with its probably the most organized uncommitted campaign, registering 47,000 votes. That's good for 8.5 points in the final poll, but that was a win in their eyes. Wisconsin's uninstructed voters, that's what they called it there, send Biden a strong message on the war in Gaza. The movement to protest President Biden at the primary ballot box in response to his handling of the war in Gaza exceeded its own expectations in Wisconsin on Tuesday. With more than 90% of the votes counted, the uninstructed option on Democratic presidential primary ballots has garnered more than 47,000 votes, according to results from the AP. That's just over 8% of the Democratic presidential primary vote counted so far. Those margins may change as the final votes are counted. They didn't change much. It ended up, like I said, 47,000. As expected, Biden won his party's presidential primary in Wisconsin on Tuesday, according to Race Call by the AP, and is already considered his party's presumptive nominee. But organizers who said they wanted to send the message to Biden to change course before November set a goal of at least 20,000 people in Wisconsin to vote uninstructed. That's about equal to Biden's margin of victory over Donald Trump in Wisconsin 4 years ago. Polls indicate another close race between the two men this year. "We have blown this last margin of victory out of the water," said Listen to Wisconsin spokesperson Heba Mohammed after watching Tuesday's results. "He needs to be paying attention and calling for an immediate permanent ceasefire as soon as possible." Ben Wickler, chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, said the president is listening and his party is working to gain their support. Yeah, is he? I think the message from so many of these voters is that they want to be able to vote for Joe Biden this November. They just don't want this heartbreaking tragedy to continue. So these are the final results from Wisconsin in 2020. As you can see, 1,630,000 for Biden, 1,610,000 for Trump. So that's about a 20,000 vote difference. The uninstructed number this time was more than double that. In Connecticut, you had 11% vote uncommitted. In Rhode Island, 15% almost uncommitted. In New York, you don't see an uncommitted vote. See, New York is politically just a complete corrupt shithole of a state. They don't allow uncommitted votes in New York. So Biden critics push Democrats to submit blank ballots in New York. Activists pressuring the president over Gaza urge voters to leave ballots unmarked since New York does not allow uncommitted votes in primaries. The Leave It Blank campaign has the support of the local Democratic Socialists of America and the Working Families Party, New York's influential left-leaning party. How influential
That's
are
not
they?
good.
Yeah.
Those are infiltrators. That's not good. Careful. Those are infiltrators.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not good.
But two of the president's most trenchant Democratic critics around the war, Representatives Jamal Bowman and AOC of New York, have not promoted it. In another twist, neither Mr. Biden nor his critics are likely to know the size of the protest vote in New York on election night. Why? Because a spokesperson for New York's Board of Elections said the body did not typically report the number of blank ballots cast in presidential primaries in initial unofficial results because they have no effect on the allocation of the delegates. What'd you say, Nick?
Now that's why the people who organized the Leave It Blank movement, they are suspect, because why would you do that if they don't count blank ballots? You know what I mean?
Well,
but go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is what we are getting at here. So there are, as I see it, sort of two facets of the uncommitted campaign. There are the real deal people in Michigan who started out with abandon Biden, meaning we're not going to vote for Biden in the primary or in November. And then you had a bunch of progressives sort of leech onto that. Rashida Tlaib, the Michael Moore type, saying, yeah, vote uncommitted to register your discontent with the party now, but of course, vote for Biden in November. So one example of this is New York DSA endorsed public advocate Jumaane Williams. So he puts his I voted sticker. That's suspect. You talk about suspect. Anybody with an I voted sticker. Right. They should have a sticker that says Fed with I voted. That's what it should say with the red, white, and blue in the background.
Bro, the only time you should have that sticker if you try and get time off work. You need to show evidence that you was there. That's the only time you have that
sticker. Yeah, exactly. So he tweets out, for November 4th, I feel duty and morally bound to do all I can to stop the existential threat of real Donald Trump. But today I get to use my vote to express my concern, anger, and disapproval in hopes that my party, the Democrats, will do better. Here's Julia Salazar with a less direct, but, just as weak version of that. We voted early this weekend for our local delegates, but I left the presidential primary part of my ballot blank for Leave It Blank and why. Doing everything in our power to defeat Trump in November means demanding Biden listen now to the 75% plus of Democrats rejecting Israel's actions in Gaza. So she's still saying it's important to defeat Trump in November. That is a signal right there that, hey, in a few months, we're going to expect everybody fall in line. So Jill Stein tweets out, shout out to everyone voting uninstructed or uncommitted, but Biden and the war parties aren't listening. They won't listen until you commit to an anti-war, anti-genocide campaign, and things won't change until we replace the warmongers with people who put peace over profit. Absolutely. So I want to go back to this guy here who signals right out of the gate. Yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden in November, but I'm just doing this to virtue signal how upset I am about it now. Because this falls in line with CJ, what you said, which is that part of this uncommitted campaign is about setting a sort of psychological and emotional roadmap, if you will, for progressives to sort of cope their way into falling in line in November. I thought you put that really well. Do you want to flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, I was basically saying is that this is what we're seeing, and in a broader thing, what we're seeing is literally a case study in how the social democrat co-op radical movements and try to put them under the leadership of them. They try. This is just a perfect example of that. They coming into this movement, abandon Biden and making it uncommitted, and it's to register your discontentment in the primary. They've been specific about the primary, so it's just a and they're trying to co-opt it, and I don't think it's going to work. We've reached genocide, and look, it's kind of like we're doing this because people are voting red or blue, but at least on genocide, where at least people are, we're seeing humanity come out in people. But anyway, the point being, this uncommitted, they're co-opting a radical movement, and the way they're doing that is trying to take people through a sort of psychological or like a 12-step program or a 6-step program, where you have to go through denial, you have to go through anger or rage, you have to go through like resentment. You know what I mean? They're taking them through all the steps so that in November it's like, what do you mean? You're still mad? You expressed your anger a few months ago. So why don't you come over here and let's save democracy? And that's really what I'm saying. But just to reiterate the point that I'm making, this is literally a case study in how social democrats attempt to co-opt movements. They're usually effective, where they come in and they take over it. But I'm seeing a separation, as you see, Keaton, where you say you can clearly see there's two lanes here, and you're not seeing that sort of merging because it's not working. The people are completely they're not falling for the rhetoric. They're not falling for the just uncommitted. And that's why you see the Biden administration pulling their hair out about RFK, for example.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, in the response to what a lot of those people making a lesser two evils argument for Biden, like, do you guys realize Biden cutting aid from UNRWA in the middle of a famine using torture-obtained confessions?
Yep.
That's way worse than anything that Trump has ever done by a wide mile. Do you guys understand that?
Yes.
And I've been saying this many times on Twitter. It's been popping recently. Well, I've been making a challenge. Name one thing Trump has done that is anything remotely as bad as Biden cutting aid to UNRWA during the middle of a pandemic.
He said, Russia, if you're listening, can you find Hillary's emails?
That's what a lot of them will say.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and they're not lying. In their mind, that is just as bad. That's how sick these fucking people are.
And you guys know, I'm not politically correct. Like, I got a lot of people in the military melting down my mentions right now on Twitter because I told them the truth that the U.S. military can't win a war without committing mass atrocities.
Right.
So I'm gonna say another.
They can't win a war with committing mass atrocities. They can't win either way.
Yeah, that's the point I made. They can't win at all. Yeah. The only thing they do is commit mass atrocities. So people need to understand, I'm not politically correct. I made a lot of people mad because I said this. So I'm gonna say this straight outright because I said the same thing about my community. If you're an Arab American, if you vote for Joe Biden, you're probably the biggest cuck in human history. You probably the biggest self-loathing government bootlicker of all time. And yes, I would say this to their face because I will have no respect if someone devalued the lives of their community so much that you're willing to vote for a guy who oversaw Israel completely demolish every single hospital in Gaza. Before this conflict, hospitals was considered off limits. They destroyed every single hospital in Gaza. And you're going to vote for the guy who gave the propaganda in the AOK when the Biden administration said that Al-Shifa Hospital was a Hamas headquarters with no evidence? In fact, not only is there no evidence, you had the Washington Post, the biggest establishment bootlicking rag there is, that did an investigation that said there's no evidence of Al-Shifa Hospital being a Hamas headquarters. You want to know who said it was? The Biden administration. And you're gonna vote for them? And I say this to the same thing in the black community for all the black boomers who vote for Jim Crow Joe, who wrote the crime bill. They sold us out, and I have no respect for them. The same way, I'm not even afraid to say if I'm outside your community, if you're an Arab American, you vote for Genocide Joe, you are pathetic and you're a cuck. Now, with that said, I 100% agree with what you guys said. You guys realize that this abandoned Biden movement, however they say it on the ballot, right? It's nothing but a positive thing. I don't want to get too much into theory with you guys, but as revolutionaries, The only thing we care about is cultivating revolutionary energy that we convert into action. And if we can get people trained in the mindset of rebelling against the ruling class, that's nothing but a positive thing. Why do you guys think the professional managerial class want to hijack it? And they will not be successful. Once again, the biggest cucks among us gonna fall for it. But this is not a bad movement because we see the PMC class try to hijack it, because I personally don't think they will be successful. You're going to have a lot of people doing essentially a Hail Mary play because they see these people leaving the Democratic Party. So their strategy is essentially a Hail Mary. How many idiots can we convince to vote against their interests? And they may trick the dumbest among us. It's going to happen, but they're not going to be successful. Overall, I think this movement is nothing but a positive thing. And I have seen nothing but revolutionary energy that came out of it. I have seen people who I would criticize as social democrats become more revolutionary over the last few months. But go ahead, CJ. I know you want to chime in. Go ahead, brother.
Well, what I was going to say is a couple of things. One thing I have written down earlier when you first started reading the article, Keaton, what came to mind was beautiful poetry, that tweet that I think it was a young lady brought up in response to somebody basically asking about lesser of two evil. What about Trump? I've been looking to hear for the best way to answer that, or, in a concise way, not in a long version. And I've never heard a better way than what I heard in that tweet. I would love for you to send that shit to me, because I'm going to be using that literally all the time, because we have reached the climax of lesser of two evil. This is what it looks like. There's nothing that can be worse than two genociders. You're saying genocide one and genocide with a Muslim ban. That's literally what we're talking about. We're not talking about any different policy. You're seeing Biden twist himself along with his PR arm known as CNN and MSNBC and all of the print media to pretend like his rhetoric is a change, like his rhetoric is satisfactory. A change in rhetoric is satisfactory, but not a change in policy. Like, you can change rhetoric, but then have 100 plus secret, arm cells to you know what I mean? It's that talking out of both sides of the mouth. Even just recently, with all that happened, even with the what's the recent tragedy that just happened? Oh, the bombing
WCK food aid workers. Yeah,
John Kirby even said after this, with all the critiques we have, nothing's changing. Literally, he said, stop asking. Our policy's not changing one iota. We believe Israel is trying their best. That's essentially what he says. So,
we're gonna play
like
it later.
Nick said, we're supposed to vote for this because he's saying I have the same goal as you of having everlasting peace. That's the goal that the empire has set for how many decades, Nick? But go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, that's the most important reason why I would condemn anyone who vote for Joe Biden. Because think about what the movement said. Listen to what the professional managerial class has said. They said we are voting uncommitted because we want Joe Biden to change course. Question: did Joe Biden change course?
Right.
He did not. That's why I said if you vote for him after that, if you vote for anyone after 40,000 plus low number dead, you already far gone.
Please clap.